Relax and get loose while I put you up on game. The Figure Booth with Josh and Nate. This that podcast for those in the know. Batman vs. Iron Man, how would it go? We talking one of a kind, collectibles. Mezco toys are respectable. It's unacceptable if it's not in the packaging. Nate don't take pics if you ain't rapping it. Nate's dirty tricks are always happening, but damn it, man, don't you be stressing. Round here we believe in plastic confessions. We trying to figure out the figures that's gonna stand the test of time. That G.I. Joe handmade hit me in the spine. There's perfection in the way that these toys are made, but I also wanna know, do I pick Wade or Slade? So this is where I come to kick it with the guys. The Figure Booth. Like, comment, and subscribe.
What is up, Toy Fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Figure Booth. I am your host, Josh, aka Prime to the First.
Hey guys, this is Nate, aka FigureFan_Nate. You've reached episode 44, which we're calling the Masters of Creations.
Man, what
could that mean? I don't know.
There needs to be like a hidden message in there. You gotta decode what we're trying to tell you guys. We're finally having time to get some guests back on here. This is going to be an awesome way to kick off 2022. Some say he's a myth, others say he's a wizard, some may even say he's a legend, but he's definitely
you can call him a master
of creations, because who do we have? None other than finally joining us is Highschool Creations, and we have him here. We brought him in direct, and he's going to share all his secrets with us. Welcome to the Figure Booth, Highschool Creations.
What's up, guys? At first, I was like, wait, am I the wrong slated person here? But yeah, thanks, guys. What an intro, and I'm glad to be here. 2022, let's go.
We are glad to have you, Mike. Yeah, we're pumped. So usually we
fans of the work. Sorry, go ahead, Prem.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say we've been fans of your work, from afar, and I know we've interacted, and you're on the enablers, and but we did an episode a couple of weeks back called The build. Yeah, and we wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit, because you're probably one of like the masters of dio creating that I know in the IG realm. And you're saying like, nah, that's not me, but it's definitely. I mean, Mike, he's got a lot of skill. I mean, he's been doing it for a long time. If you look at his YouTube channel, he's been doing it for a long time. His Instagram, he's got a lot of experience. He's one of the only guys that I see do laser cutting. So I wanted to really pick his brain and kind of get to know more. So we're happy to have you, Mike. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, he's the Donnie of the pack, He's the one with all the gadgets and stuff. So gotta get Donnie on here. And a lot of times we've talked on our show, we've talked about a bunch of different topics. And I think the one way we want to start out is just like the collection, the goal of your collection. And how long have you been a collector? Have you been doing it the majority of your life? Did it start as a kid?
Well, I answered a question like a few years back, and it got very weird because I've been a collector. And if we're just talking about action figures, I really jumped back in about 3 or 4 years ago and just been going hard ever since. But, I've been a collector at heart all my life, whether it was shark teeth or rocks or stamps. Mm-hmm. I've always collected something, and I've kept those things. I'm a very firm believer. If I like something, I'm going to keep it. I'm not buying it to resell it later, or something that I'm really into.
Yeah.
Now, if it's always a plus, if 10, 20 years from now, it's worth more, that's great. But that's not the intentions of the collection. So I open my toys, I play with my toys, I pose them, as long as I have time to do that, right? But really, my son, what kicked off this total artistry thing, rekindled it, was about 3 or 4 years ago, about a year after my son was born. Really, I started getting back into action figures and collecting. And dude, what an age for action figures, right? They've totally, the past 10, 15 years have just, the landscape has changed. There's so much more fun to play with. And there's every theme, genre, TV show, everything's out there. If you're a collector, it's a great time.
And that's the most impressive thing is like my kid right now, he's 10, and there's so much, the plethora of just action figures that you can choose from. And it's almost, when you have so many options, you can't even pick one, And I think for some of us collectors are a bit older, and we've been in certain lines for such a long time, that we have so many options. It's like, that's where that where you get that feeling of being overwhelmed, because then you just want to collect it all. You're like, oh, I've never had so many options. I want to get it all. I want to get all 31 flavors. And then you end up with boxes and boxes of stuff and you don't get to enjoy them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you know, like, because I went through a period where I kind of stopped collecting for a while, and then you get back into it as you get older. And that's one of the things that sort of overwhelms you, because we do, to Mike's point, kind of live in this golden age of collecting where there's just so much available from so many different properties and different companies and different things that might interest you. I remember when I first got back into it, I was a little overwhelmed and just started kind of grabbing everything. Just like, let me grab this, let me grab that, just acquiring. And then over time, it kind of, you're like, okay, these are the things I want to focus on. These are things that were cool, but maybe I'm not going to collect these as much. So you kind of go through that too, Mike, where you sort of didn't know where you wanted to go, but you just liked the toys, and then you kind of started focusing on certain things, or do you just kind of collect everything?
I feel myself maturing a little bit after 3 or 4 years of collecting, to the point of just having all this stuff, right? And at first I was grabbing everything because I wanted to build a collection of the things I liked. And I realized there's so many different variations of this one character. Like, why do I have 15 Wolverines from how many different lines, right? Yeah. So now it's like, okay, I know what I really like. I know the brands and I know which ones I really want to get into. And, they are the higher price ones. I'm getting out of Legends a little bit. I'm more choosy on Legends. I'm not going to buy a whole wave anymore just because I see them on the peg. Mm-hmm. Now that we're in this everything's pre-order phase, it's like I can sit back and I feel like I know I'm going to get my toy. It's just, it kind of sucks seeing others get theirs before me, even though I have it on order. So a little more comfortable now. The FOMO isn't as bad as it used to be, but I'm in some different lines. Like yesterday, someone mentioned, or maybe last week, someone mentioned the classic suit Spider-Man that Hot Toys has come out with. Mm-hmm. So I immediately jumped in there, forgot it was on pre-order. I jumped on and I pre-ordered it, and ended up buying 2 other Hot Toys. I bought the Miles Morales I got the Cyborg Spider. That Cyborg Spider-Man looks dope, dude.
It does.
So I was like, it got me. And you get the payment plan. So, I'm splitting it over 3 months and it feels a lot easier.
Yeah. And I'm on the fence of getting that Cyborg Spider-Man. And when I saw Dwayne Shoots Toys promote that he just picked up the Miles Morales, I was like, damn, should I don't know. Like, it's gonna be a slippery slope. Yeah, because I want that classic Spidey. Some of the pictures that have came out, the costume looks a little baggy, but overall, Mac, I don't know. I'm tempted to get my first hot toy.
So I pulled out, not to get too much into it, but I have the Tech Suit Spider-Man, which is a similar color. I think I opened it up.
I remember
a couple months back. I reopened it, and dude, I love the figure, and that's one of the things that helped me, really determine that I was going to buy some more, 6 scale Spider-Man was that figure. The accessories, the detail. Yeah. They just look great, dude. Yeah, I feel like I'd miss out if I didn't get that. At least the classic suit.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just end up pulling the trigger on the classic suit eventually.
There we go.
Also,
and it makes sense, if it's one of your main characters. Like I'm assuming Spider-Man's probably one of your favorites, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like back growing up in the '90s, animated Spider-Man animated series was the jam. And that got me hooked into everything. Mm-hmm. And the symbiotes are my favorite too. So Spider-Man symbiotes, that whole line is just great to me.
Yeah, I've been tempted by Hot Toys a few times, but I've stayed away from it just because I'm mostly 1/12 scale. Yeah. But I feel like if I did make the jump to Hot Toys, it's like one of those once you pop, you can't stop type things. Like I wouldn't be able to stop myself from getting more because, I'd probably start with like a Batman. I'm like, okay, now I need a Robin. Yeah. Now I need a Joker. Now I need some of the other Rogues Gallery. It just keeps on going. But I mean, they are amazing toys. Yeah. You can't deny the quality there.
For sure.
So digging in, let's learn a little bit more about you, Mike. Just kind of like, I know you started your YouTube account quite a while ago. I did some background research on you, by the way. Did some digging.
It's stat time.
Yeah. You started like way back in 2011. And I know you didn't like maybe post right away, but you probably started your account just so you could follow others and maybe do your own thing with Discovery. And you started kind of posting just like personal stuff, really. Like you going out onto the lake, and I think you had what was the Scout 210 XSP?
Oh,
one
man,
of your first videos.
Yeah.
This is your life, Mike.
Yeah. And I know it's not something you're focusing on now, but like what prompted you to just hey, I'm going to start posting on YouTube? Like, what was the feel there?
So I was working with a few buddies, and they were, I think Brandon was on back in December. We talked about this, but he was like some of the first enabling. We were enabling each other to do like video content, off-roading and stuff like that. We even built vehicles. We enabled each other so much, but we loved the idea of recording what we were doing. Wanted to take our hobbies to the next level. So whether it was fishing or boating or off-roading, I was recording that and putting it into YouTube. And I struggled. I was really trying to do something with YouTube, and I struggled, didn't know what I was doing. I was new to it. And, eventually I just kind of forgot about it, right? And then jumped back into it when I started doing, toy collecting and doing some of the stuff with, cosplay and then dioramas. I got back into everything I was very interested in. So that's where it picked back up. So there's a huge lull, but some of those videos still get views and I still get comments, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. And you can tell you've got sort of you're very diverse in your background, and you seem to be very artistic in a way. Even what you were doing with the YouTube stuff where you're just kind of recording you guys going out and camping, you always have sort of like a certain style of how you're doing it and the quality's there. And then you kind of evolve into doing drawing and painting. And then, you can kind of see you're exploring toys a little bit and doing reviews and kind of like, I think that maybe got you into diorama building, but you've always had this like really strong artistic background. It seems it's something that you're really passionate about. So is that something you've always kind of done from a kid, like the drawing, and then that sort of just fueled the fire for the passion?
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, I've been, either doing like watercolors for mom or drawing. If I was getting in trouble, I was writing my name or something like that. So I was always using my hands to do things. I love creating things, whether it's good or bad. I make art that's good. I make art that is shit. It's still art though.
Right.
And I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. I went to, I won awards to get into like art schools when I was really young, and I wasn't great, but I just kept doing it, loved doing it. And I think that was the biggest thing. Unfortunately, when I got to high school, like besides drawing at the back of the class, weird ass things, like I really wasn't, very artistic. And then I totally lost it. I went to school for a couple semesters right out of high school for graphic design and was completely let down about what the market could be for me, and was told basically, it's a dead end job. So I switched careers to technology. And then for like 10, 15 years, I didn't do anything creative at all. And then my son was born, and I found some stuff while I was home, during that time with him, and it just something clicked, and I just started drawing again and digitalizing those drawings from high school, and it just escalated into collecting, creating cosplay, and then dioramas, and then that's where we are today. So there was just this eruption of I really need to get back into it, and there was all that inspiration, and I credit my kids for that.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, because it's something that you did when you were younger, and then now you have your kids, and it's like it sparks it, and you're like, I want to share this with my kids. This is something that I think we could do together. So
Absolutely.
Really cool.
And they don't let me chill, man. This year was supposed to be a chill year, and I've got like 4 dioramas behind me. My son's like, hey, let's cut some stuff out on the laser, cut it with wood. Or like the other day, it's like, let's make it. He's only 4.5. He's like, let's make a T-Rex out of metal. And I'm like, dude, I don't have anything at the time to cut metal, but we're going to do that one day, And it's like, it just keeps pushing me, and it's great. It's I can't tell him no, so it keeps me progressing forward.
That's really cool. Talk about a future dial maker. He's got a great teacher, and he's learning a lot probably from you, so I can't wait to see what he's going to create in maybe 10 years after he's learned all of your skills.
Oh, right. Yeah, dude. I can't wait. I don't want it to come, but I can't wait, dude. I love the kids in this age. Like I'm already scared of them getting older, man. It's happening so quick.
Yeah.
And I think what's also like really crazy is the impact you've had in the community. Like it really felt like you came out of nowhere, but then there was like such a presence where it's like, how did people not know about Highschool Creations? Like I remember, I think the first time your profile or your IG page was starting to get mentioned was on Unparalleled Universe, like Tuesday's stream or his Friday stream. And then it was just like a wave where I was like, oh man, I think what really attracted even more attention was you were just so inclusive of everyone. You wanted everyone to participate, and you weren't like shy about sharing your process or your technique or what tools you had. It was very like, hey, come on, doesn't everybody want to have fun with me type of thing, where I was like, man, he's making it very welcoming. And then you were always like promoting positivity. I know the whole sticker swap thing. And I was like, oh man, that's like, I suck at drawing. I was like, I really suck. So I took it upon myself, like, you know what, that's going to be a really awesome challenge, because it forced me to draw, I think, like on a weekly basis. And then after that, I haven't drawn in such a long time, where I can see my progress, where I was really like, I can't draw a straight line even with the ruler. And then I saw the progress, and then I kind of like, I stopped just because life got hectic, and sometimes I look back, I'm like, damn, I need to get back to it, because I was having a lot of fun during that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I see your art. You sent me the stickers. I see it every day in my shop. I put it in so many places. Like my connection to you a lot of times is you draw in those things. So I look at you as an artist in that respect, not just the cabinets and the dioramas. So that's funny. But yeah, it was cool. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to do those things. Just like, with the community building, it takes a lot of time to do that. And, I'm a big advocate for sharing and, just helping people if they want to do the art. This is how to do it. Like, this is one way to do it, right? There's tons of way to do it. This is how I do it. And, these are the tools that I'm using. Now, some tools you can't afford, some you can't, maybe you can. But, one of my biggest things is when I build something, if I think there's a better way to do it, I'm going to try to do it, whether that's, the technique or another tool that can do it better. And that's how I wound up with all these tools in the shop. Is just, I want to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. No, that was awesome.
Constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of tools, like, what's one of the first tools that you decided to invest into?
So airbrush was one of the first things I bought, and I just bought a cheap master, and I still have it. And I was using that for cosplay to make helmets. Wasn't prepared, but I can show this off. Some of the helmets I was doing is out of like EVA foam and stuff like that.
Okay. Nice.
So I was using airbrush to paint these up. And that's where I noticed like a lot of the tools are very similar across the crafts. Even when you look at the different hobbies now, the tools are pretty much the same, right? Even the base tools of an X-Acto knife, a straight edge, airbrush, it's just what you're doing with them that's different. And I started taking pictures of action figures and noticed backgrounds. And I was like, oh, what's that made of? So I did some research on YouTube, and it's made out of foam. Don't use the green foam, use the pink foam kind of things, right? You learn. And as you learn, you see more. It's like when you played in Zelda. I've been playing Zelda a lot. Remember the maps? Like, you don't get a full view of the map, but as you move further, the map gets bigger and you see more. It's kind of like that, right? The more you do, the more you experience, the more, it snowballs. And I encourage that. Do your own research, right? Go out there and, do it yourself. People, you can ping people all you want for the answer directly, but self-discovery, you're going to learn a lot more.
Right. Yeah, man. I couldn't agree with that more. I think a lot of people, maybe that come into the hobby, whether it's toy photography or diorama building, they just feel like, I can start and be a Highschool Creations, or I can start and just start shooting photos like The Amazing, like you got to have the passion for the craft, to Mike's point. You got to do your own research and just learn. Nobody can really teach you how to do certain things. They can tell you all day long, like, oh, you do this, you do that. But unless you go through that experience yourself, like, you're never really going to fully learn it. And you just got to have that passion for it. So it's clear that you have the passion. You wanted to keep learning as you're going. And I think it's so awesome that you're willing to share as much as you are with others in the community, because I think a lot of people maybe try to safeguard, their secrets or how to do certain things, or, whatever the case is. So the fact that you're trying to encourage education and that sharing of resources is really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's tough to do that because honestly, if you think about it, like if you share a tip that, turns out really good, it can be used against you, especially if you're in this to make money. I'm not in this to make money. Now, the money that I make, it does go towards tools into the collection, but this isn't my main thing. This is a hobby. Right. My day job is, a nice job that I went to school for, and it's stressful. This is how I de-stress. And that's why there's so much passion, because I don't have a hate for it, because it is my main job, right? At some point, everybody hates their job. This isn't a job. I don't want it to be a job. And not to get off track, but that's one of the reasons why I pulled back all the commissions for 2022. I want to rekindle the love for this hobby. And I was kind of losing that with all the commissions, right? It becomes a job. And I'm not dependent on it. I want it to be fun. And I want to take the time out to show my kids why they're still interested in me to be able to do this. And that's what this year is all about.
No, and that's really smart. Just being self-aware of like, hey, this is remembering your why. Okay, this is my hobby. And it's really easy for the driving factor or the motivation to kind of shift because one, you become popular or successful, however you want to phrase it. And then the demand is really high because everyone in the toy community wants to support you. And when you start seeing the additional income coming through, you're like, oh, okay, now I can quit my day job and make this. But then you start losing the passion. And now you start stressing because then deadlines, you know, and then you start falling behind. And then the minute you start burning one or two bridges, the way it is in certain communities, like they'll let everybody know. And that's it. It takes one or two bad reviews where it's like, hey, this guy took my money and didn't deliver, or he delivered months late, or whatever the case may be. Then that's it. Then now you're stressed because now you put yourself in a corner. So I think that's really smart where you're able to like take a step back and be like, you know what, and I think some individuals rely on that aspect too much, that their hobby or their artistic skill is really, they're leveraging it just to make money, where it's like when you first started out, it wasn't about the money. Like I think as an artist, you got to remind yourself, if that's not your driving factor and you don't want to make it a business, then consistently tell yourself that and be able to walk away and be like, it's okay because I'm not relying on that income, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think with dial making or customizing or even doing cabinets like you're doing Prime, when you start doing that for customers, you're opening yourself up to like a lot of random requests and things that maybe me as a customer, I'm asking you to do something that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, or you're trying to conceive like, how am I actually going to solve this problem that this guy's asking me for, you know? And that puts all that extra stress, and you don't want the stress because then that takes away the fun. And part of the fun is just creating stuff that you want to create and things that inspire you. So that would be a fear of mine, just like getting a commission request that I just don't really care about or seems overly complicated, you know, and you got to make that decision. Do I say no? Do I take the money and try to do the best that I can? This is my name on the line here. So there's a lot of stress to make sure I'm delivering a product that is representative of me. You know, I can imagine wanting to kind of step away from that and be like, all right, I want to get back to what used to be fun about this.
Right.
And it's the same thing with toy photography. If it starts to feel like a job, or if I'm not having fun, I'll just step away from it a little while and then wait until that inspiration hits me again, you know, and then get back into the shop. So, you know, like you talk about, you know, you started with you started painting, you did the mask,
the
which
cosplay
is made out of foam, and the cosplay stuff. What was like the next step for you, Mike? Like, where did you go after that to start learning more? Was it the dioramas?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I've always built things. I was building weird things in high school, like in my spare time. And, you know, I've always had an interest in building miniatures, just never really took the step to do that. I've always thought it was really cool to transform something that's really large or a place I've never been into something that I can hold in my hand, right? And I didn't know where to start. So, like I said, I went out there and started. YouTube is a source for all sorts of learning, right? So there's all this stuff out there. And, you know, I can't remember some of the first YouTube channels I was watching. I was just binging so much to be able to learn something. Like, I didn't know where to start. Right. So if I wanted to know something specific, I go Google it and then test it, or YouTube, excuse me, and test it on something in the shop. Back then, the shop was only like whatever space in the garage I had because it was a garage. And it's evolved since then. But you know, really, it was just research. Like, how do I do this? I know what I want to do. I have an idea of how to do it, but what is the proper way to do this? And, you know, there's many different techniques out there, and I would try something. Like, for a long time, I was a big fan of the salt method for my dumpsters. And then I found chipping media, and I was like, well, there's like 4 steps for the salt, and there's 2 steps for the chipping media. I'm going to use a chipping media. Yeah. So, you know, you just learn things like that. And, it's fun. The main thing is to keep it fun, right? Don't get boring. If you screw something up, it's okay. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. Do it again. See how it goes.
Right. Just keep learning. And, you know, like you're talking about the salt method. I don't know what half that stuff is, but I mean, it seems like something that's probably common within the diorama making world. Like just those different methods, like those skills. And like you're talking about, you start adding tools to your tool belt. Like, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to paint. I know these 2 different methods. Okay, let me evolve that into something else. And then, some of the stuff that you're working on now, which we'll get into a little bit later, you can kind of see the culmination of sort of all these skills starting to come together into something that's really amazing. So going back to your name, you kind of mentioned a little bit, like while you're in high school, you used to create. So is that where you got the name, like Highschool Creations?
Yeah. So when it comes to names, I'm not very creative at all. So, when my son was born, I was home during that time. I'd found those drawings I did in high school, and luckily I kept them all. They were nice in a nice binder. Like, I think I planned to do something with them and just never did. Like, I think I wanted to make a cartoon or something. There was just a bunch of crazy stuff. So I was like, okay, let me digitalize them. Someone gave me a Wacom tablet, and I started like drawing them. Oh no, I scanned them and then brought them in and started just like digitalizing them. I was like, well, maybe I should post. Me and Brandon, who I was just talking about, the guy that enabled me to do YouTube and off-roading, we were pressuring each other to post. And one of the things, I'm very afraid of public speaking, being in the public light, whatever. So I was very afraid to post as myself, based on, who I knew back then and who followed me. So I was like, let me come up with a name on Instagram. That seems like the place to post pictures of things. And I was like, these are from Highschool Creations. And that's where the name came from. So not very creative at all. And I get a lot of like, hey, you're not a high schooler type thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's the name. And at this point, it's Highschool Creations for, years now. So it's going to stay.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
Well, it's one of those things that's instantly recognizable. I mean, you've been around long enough. I think everybody knows kind of who that is. Like you mentioned Highschool Creations. Oh yeah, that's Mike.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one of those things that we're our own worst critics, but I think it's a catchy name. It's something that is very recognizable for me. You have your logo that kind of goes along with it. Yeah. So, and speaking of one of those creations, and this is me doing that digging, but was one of the original ones, the America Frank.
So oddly enough, like, and I was building this helmet here, like I was just expanding my shop, and I built this first bench behind me. And I was into wood burning or something. Like I bought a wood burner and was like burning stuff onto pallets. And I just happened to be in the garage drinking some beer and had a Sharpie. And I drew that on the table. And I was like, okay, America Frank. Like, I don't know what to call things. It's Frank. It's an eagle. It's America. So America Frank. And I took a picture of it off the wood that I drew it on and threw it into Photoshop and then digitalized it.
That's awesome.
It's amazing, dude. And well, you can see that's the passion that you had for just creating and doing something that's original. You're not like trying to recreate a Spider-Man comic. You're trying to make something that's very original to yourself. So I think you can see that in a lot of the work that you do. You're not really like trying to recreate other things. You're just trying to create your own thing, which I think a lot of people can respect.
Yeah, a lot of times, but I think I'm best at recreation. I'm very good at looking at something and understanding plans, and like I like measuring. I like preciseness, especially as I get older for some reason. So like I love replicating things because it's already made. I just have to make it smaller and then come up with a way, an engineering way almost, of how I make it in some sort of CAD software or laser software. And that's the part I really geek out about, is like building up to the point of almost paint. And that's really fun to me.
It's kind of like the reverse engineering. Like you see the finished product, you're like, okay, how did I get to that finished product? But that's where the genius kind of comes in, because, a lot of people can look at something and not be able to recreate it or understand the mechanics that go behind it. So that kind of shows some of those tools that we're talking about that you're adding to your tool belt and things that you're kind of learning over time.
Yeah, a lot of that will end up be the drivers. Like, I just want to understand how it works. I may not want to keep doing this, but once I understand how it works, like, okay, my brain is satisfied, moved on to something next. So,
right. Yeah. You kind of scratch that itch. You're like, okay, what's the next thing I want to look at?
Yeah.
What's the next thing I want to get into? And you did toy photography for a while too, right? Like you still kind of do it off and on, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things is I've learned, how to do it. I'm still not very good at lighting and, framing up the shot, but I do understand like there's a lot that goes into a production of a shot. And a lot of times I want to leave that setup in place for a very long time to catch some photos because, out of 1,200 photos, like 1 or 2 is good. It ends up taking up the space. And the more I got into building, the less space I had. And I can't do it inside because the kids would tear it apart. So I just got to the point where I know I'm very close to be able to take a great photo, and I want to keep doing that and getting better. But there's also this huge production behind it. I just don't have a lot of time for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way, though. I totally understand what you're talking about. When you get a setup that you like and it's producing a photo that you're like, okay, I want to keep that just the way it is. I don't want to touch it. But then, it takes up space. I can't do other photos. I can't just do the same, background every single time. So eventually I have to get rid of it. But yeah, sometimes the setup is not the fun part. It's once you get something that you like, you're like, okay, let me start doing different photos, different poses, changing up the framing a little bit. But I mean, you posted a lot of shots, and you've clearly got some skill when it comes to setting up a scene. And you say you're not great at lighting, but from what I can tell, you do a great job. So I think it's not something you're passionate about. You definitely have some skill behind it, to keep doing it. So I'd like to see more from you if that's something you want to do in the future.
Oh yeah. And it all depends on the figures. Like I think a lot of my best shots are from like aliens figures, and that's because I love aliens a lot. So when I have a passion for like a figure, I want to shoot the hell out of it, man. Get it in the sexiest pose I can and get the best shot I can. And a lot of times I put too much into it. Like there's too much overhead in a lot of my shots, and I think I get burnt out quick, whether it's buying quality or trying to create quality. And but I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah, the toy is the focus, and I'll spend a lot of time on a toy I really love.
Yeah, and speaking of your aliens work, you did a series of like aliens and predator shots, and there's some of the ones that really pop off the page to me, especially that one where you've got the xenomorph really close. You got like the white light coming down. He's got the red in his face. Really, really cool shot. And the dial that you're using for that, is that one that you made?
I believe so, and that went to Laser Pants. Actually, it was an anniversary present from his wife to him.
Nice.
That is awesome. Yeah, because it looked like you had built-in lights. There's separate corridors, and then you have like a door. So, did you build in lights on those corridors on the side? And was that like a switch or something, or?
Yeah, they were all integrated LEDs in the floor, and then those columns or pillars, and then the top. And it's a mess of a wiring. It was the first time I ever wired something up that complex, and I'd planned on doing like some sort of like pre-order on it, but once I saw that it would be a lot of work to do a pre-order because a lot of people loved it, a lot of people wanted it, but at the end I made one and it went to Laser Pants.
Yeah, that was awesome. What was one of your first styles where you're like that you tackled? Was it just you trying to make something for your photography, or was it a commission?
Yeah, it was just a brick wall. And then the second one was another sci-fi corridor that's an epic fail, and it's up on. It would never go anywhere. It's up on the storage. I can see it every day. It's just a failure of something I tried to do using like the fish under gravel filters and stuff like that. But dude, I spent like 3 weeks out in the garage and finally was like, this thing sucks. I'm never touching it again. That was like one of the second dioramas I made. It was over ambitious, didn't know what I was trying to do, and didn't plan it out. So
So it sounds like that's what your takeaway was from that, to plan it out.
Yeah, plan it out, draw it out, plan it out. And that's changed over time too. But at least have an idea for size, scale, and what you're trying to accomplish as far as a look. Right, just don't go in with like these cherry ideas and try to create something that large. Right, get the plan together at least roughly and know the design before you jump into it.
Yeah, it's really crucial, having some type of vision. And it's funny because I think when you started, before you started doing your shows on Saturdays, the Diorama Talk, I remember one of your lives, it was you and Vasco Toys. You guys were talking about like recreating one of your first dials, or make it like challenging individuals. And I was like, man, and I looked back at one of the first dials I had made, and I was like, I'm gonna redo it. And I have, it's so crazy because I was like, now I feel like I've acquired much more insight on my process and how to make the brick. I have obviously different tools now. I'm like, I'm gonna CNC it, I'm gonna do this. And it's funny because I cut all the brick and the foam's just sitting there. I didn't paint it. I just got sidetracked. So I'm like, the passion for making dials is definitely not there. And I'm at a point where I'm waiting for it to hit me again. I'm like, and I don't know if it's burnt or I don't know if it's like I felt like it was turning into a job, so I have to take a step back. But I looked back at that first style and I'm like, that was okay. It was one of my first ones. I could definitely do better as far as like cuts and the paint job, because you can look at it and you're like, okay, that's kind of like an alleyway. All right, nothing special. But I would love to revisit that idea, and now with everything I've learned now, and like take it to the next level and really be proud of it, where I wasn't so proud. But I remember seeing that live that you and Basketball Toys was doing, and I was like, man, I should go back and revisit some of my older projects, and then like, hey, this is a better version. But I've done that with a lot of the arcades. I've like made progress, and that sometimes I look at my very first arcade, I have it up in my shop too, where I'm like, man, that's a piece of crap. Like but that is what led me to where I'm at now, you know? So there's a lot of takeaways from that.
Yeah.
You kind of have to go through that to learn, right? Like I remember you told me about that tile that you made prime, and you had like one wall that was one kind you know, like brick, and then you had one that was maybe more cement, and then another wall that was something else with like moss or something.
Yeah, it was just
so like you didn't really have a clear vision, but you knew that you wanted to try these different techniques. And it sounds like on that sci-fi one that you're talking about, you had a bunch of ideas that you wanted to try. Like, I want to try this technique. I want to try this technique. Maybe it didn't all come together, but it's a good way to kind of learn. And I think sometimes you have to go through those periods where you create something maybe you're not entirely proud of, but after that, you're like, okay, now I've learned so much about how to do this properly the next time.
Yeah.
So sometimes you kind of have to go through that method of creating something you didn't. Yeah, you kind of create a mess just to be like, okay, this is not what I want to do next time, but I've got extra tools now to go into that next project. So I feel a bit more prepared. So, you know, when you started shifting into creating dios, Mike, and, you know, I know you've got a bunch of different tools now that you use, but what was one of the first tools that you kind of required to start doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was the X-Acto knife and straight edge. I was watching Black Magic Craft. He does like tabletop gaming, and I was starting. You know, it's just a smaller scale, but it's the same practices, right? And you know, one of the things he harped on is, you know, you can do this thing simple. And this is how. And I always like to start simple and work up, right? I don't want to just jump in. And that's, you know, just what we were talking about. The experience is the thing you can't buy in this hobby, and it takes time to build up. You know, just because, you know, you want to be like somebody, it takes time to get to that level, right? And just understand that, you know, the more time you spend there, the better you're going to be in the end. So, you know, practice that. But anyway, so the first couple of things is, you know, straight edge, the X-Acto knife, the retracting blade, right? Those are the simplest tools that I was able to cut the bricks with. And actually thinking back now, I was using green foam. So I just used a big pen. I drew bricks with a big pen and a ruler, and it actually looked really dope. I was happy with it. I used Plasti Dip because that's all I had as far as spray as the base coat. And then just, you know, did some dry brushing of gray, and that was it. There was no like washes, no other dry brushing techniques with lighter or darker colors. You know, it was very basic. I still have the piece. It's up in storage, but I still have it. And it's held up. It's still a good looking piece. But there's definitely things that I did really wrong and will never do again if I build a diorama.
You had to kind of go through that to learn, you know, and, you know, X-Acto knife and a straight edge seems like maybe a simple tool, but you gotta learn just the clean cuts, right? And straight cuts, as you're talking about, you're precise. And if you try to make a brick wall or something without that, it's going to look pretty janky. And that seems to be a lot of a starting point for some people. Like if you want to start diorama building, try to make a brick wall, see how you feel about it, and then go from there. Because it's one of those basic steps, it seems like, that a lot of people kind of go through, is just building a wall or something like that, just to learn the basics.
You can learn a lot about somebody's skill by looking at the brick wall they did by hand. Because there's going to be a lot of measuring if they really care. And there's going to be a lot of, especially your first one, there's going to be flaws, but some people's flaws may be worse than others. And you can just get a lot of information about how that person is about building just from their brick wall, right? You know, whether that's the scale of the brick, the size of the brick. Some look, you know, overly large. Some look small. Some look more into scale. then you get, especially with the vertical cuts, the cut through the horizontal lines, and it's like, okay, so there's a lot of things you can learn by looking at a piece that, maybe other diorama makers or non-diorama makers may not see. Right. So it's always interesting to get that perspective from a fellow diorama builder.
That is an interesting point. It's something that maybe I wouldn't notice, but you guys being experts in it, you're like, that's an interesting technique. I haven't seen it done that way before. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the telltales is like when you're protruding or defining your lines after you cut with a pen, and then you miss your line and go over it. But a lot of people leave it there, and it looks cool. To the normal person, it just looks like, weathering, but you can always call it out as a diorama. Oh, that's where you got off track, you and your...
And I used to hate that. I hate with a passion making bricks, because every once in a while my hand would just slip or something. I'm like, oh, now I got to make this brick a cracked brick. And then that's when I started learning like how to like either make indentations where I make the brick look like it fell out, or I would cut the brick out, just different, because to cover up those mistakes. And then it's a mistake, but then you're like, you know what? Like that actually, it's a different look now. Now I'm going to start doing that more, and, start picking away the bricks, or add another so the brick is sticking out of the wall. Just different techniques.
Yeah, goes back to just experience. Like you learn from every piece of it, right?
Yeah.
I see some people now that are able to make bricks that are actually have different dimension. Like maybe one's sticking out a little bit more. One's got a piece that's kind of like in the wall a little bit. It looks a little imperfect, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that's going to be 100% perfect, like clean. Yeah. To Mike's point, if you just got straight lines up and down the whole way. But that, to me, is just some crazy skill when you can see different variations in the brick. Like you really took your time on all those individual bricks to make them look unique and things like that. So like, I know it sounds simple, but like, how do you approach something like that where you're trying to do depth to a brick process, which seems like something that's fairly, I don't know, straightforward. Like what are some tips that you could do to make those flare out or something?
Yeah. So, once you have your bricks cut, you could always just take something and push those bricks down, right? So you can get that retracted kind of look. To build up, you could always cut some foam and add a thin layer over some bricks. Or if you cut out bricks, you could always reuse those bricks on bricks, right? So reusing the foam. You could always hand cut bricks. I did that on a piece, which I'll show, I think, today if we have time. That will give you that defined look of individual bricks, whether they're recessed or protruding out. So that's a really cool effect. It just takes a lot of time to do that. But I think the easiest way is really going to be push those bricks down. Once you have your cuts, either pushing those bricks down or cutting those bricks out and then adding them to the top of other bricks is probably the easiest method.
Wow. Yeah, you had like so many different ideas. I'm just thinking of one, like, I could push some bricks down, but Mike's got all these different ideas. You can see the wheels are turning. And I can see in your hand, you're holding maybe, what is that, plexiglass or something? And that had to be cut with your laser, right?
Yeah, it was. I could maybe cut one by hand.
Yeah. Well, I only say that like not you couldn't do that, but they look so precise and they're all like identical.
Yes. That's one of my things is like I love building stuff, and we'll build stuff, probably once or twice by hand. But once I understand it, and then I can take that and design it, I'm going to reproduce it on the laser. Why would I produce 10 windows if I can go do it exactly the same every time on the laser? And that's my point. I'm not trying to cut corners. Trying to be precise and duplicate the work that I've already done. Right. Like these windows, right?
Insane. Yeah, just so much detail. And to do that by hand.
Yeah, I could never do these by hand. I'm not going to even lie on that one. I could probably cut the shape out, but there's no way I can do that intricate. That would take hours. Maybe with a punch or something. There's probably a way to do it, but I'm not. If I already had the laser, I'm not going to try to figure that out. But I can reproduce this the same way every time. There's still some hand processing here, right? I'm designing this in the software, and then I'm layering pieces of chipboard. So there's still some manipulation here. It's not just like you go press and say T-Oral Gray and it just shows up, right? Yeah. You're doing something to make it. You put the material in, you're setting the level on the bed, right? You're making sure you have the right cutting power and the speed. Yeah. There's still things that you have to do to make this work. It's not magic. It doesn't do it itself.
I love your Star Trek Picard reference. I think that's what that was.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't materialize, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But man, that's like I said before, like you don't see a whole lot of people at least broadcasting that they're using laser cutter, so like what was the catalyst that made you take that jump? Like, okay, I'm going to do a laser cutter. Is it the preciseness that it provides, the speed that you can do it in, to be able to reproduce things in a certain way? Like, what was the one thing that really got you to do it?
All the above. I've been working with the CNC for a couple years now. I think I bought it in 2020, summer 2020. I saved up all my diorama lunch money from the year before, and I bought a Shipoko 3XL. And I love that machine, but there were some limitations on one that was speed. I was spending a lot of money on bits trying to get these really fine cuts, and I knew there was a better way to do it. And through the Instagrams and networking with people, there were some people that were starting to use lasers. I think one of the first people I remember seeing, and he may have got it around the same time I did, was Crashbox Customs. Was using some laser stuff. And Glowforge just last year released their desktop one, and I've been wanting to do like personalized like signs and like cutting boards and stuff for a long time. But buying a laser, getting into it, allowed me to just not do diorama stuff, but do all sorts of things. When I got that laser, Kevin was like I was a kid with scissors. I was cutting everything I could. Stuff was missing out of the kitchen. I was engraving our names on everything. My wife was asking where this stuff was. I'm like, I'll bring it back, I promise. Yeah, I'm like making knives.
Yeah,
like
amazing.
So, while I had some, I guess, seed planting from some of the creators and on Instagram, I was already thinking about how I want to do things differently. The CNC just wasn't doing what I needed to do. It's still a perfect tool. There's some things you can't cut with the laser due to, putting up poisonous gases. So I don't use it as much as I used to, but it's still a very, intricate part of my shop. And if anything, when people come do like a tour, I'll call it a tour, it's still interesting to show them the CNC. So.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, because you got the CNC, you got the laser, you've got probably a 3D printer somewhere in there, I'm sure. And this is something I talked about with Prime, but when it comes to 3D printers, what is Resin or, I'm sorry, what was the other?
Filament.
Filament. Which one do you prefer, Resin or filament? I know there's two different methods, but we get a lot of questions, when we did that builds episode, people are like, well, if I had to pick one, what would I start with?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably some controversy out there for it, but my thing is I started out with PLA printers. I really like them. I have 3 Creality Ender 3s, and for simple things like windows, manhole covers, rudimentary type objects, I think they work great. They're still quick, they're reliable, but if you want detail and perfection, and you want it small, that's where resin comes into play, right? Big pieces are going to take many hours. But if you want like a handle set, like Pybox, I got in touch with him. He's a 3D sculptor. And I was like, hey, I need these door handles for a project I'm working on. I'm not going to do that in PLA. You won't get the detail that you want out of it. So resin's the way to go. So I think hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
Detail versus you just want an object. Because PLA is still very good prints.
Yeah.
You just see lines. For windows, that doesn't matter. Doors, that may not matter. There's certain objects that it may not matter. Time may be a problem. Maybe you're trying to, get a prototype of something built. It doesn't need to have the detail, but it needs to have, the size or at least, some sort of presentation. You could do that more quickly, probably on PLA.
Okay.
But I use it like I have some. I'm gonna grab something else here. I have a few Mando helmets that these are PLA printed. You can see the lines. This one had a shift in the bed. It was brand new and it just happened to layer during this, 2-day print on this thing. But these lines can be bondoed or filled or sanded down, and it looks good and it's solid. So
yeah,
do you printed that all in one print? Wow.
Yeah, I got a second one I can show you. It looks a little better.
That's impressive.
So again, I figured out a better technique to get
Yeah.
smoother lines, right? So
that's crazy good.
That looks really good.
Yeah.
And they're still passable for dope helmets if you want to wear them somewhere. So, and it's PLA. It's stronger. I feel like resin may be a little more brittle.
Right.
I don't know why I said that weird. Brittle.
Brittle?
So it just depends on the application, honestly. Yeah. If you got the money, get both. They're cheap as, I would not say dirt, but for under $400, you could probably get 4 if you shop, or not 4, 1 of each if you shop around.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And it's just amazing what you can make with that. And it's funny, my wife, who knows that, I do the podcast and have toy photography. She's like, yeah, get somebody on that can talk about how to make little things, and what's the best way to do that. She's looking at like these little chip bags or like these little toys that somebody on Etsy is selling. And she's like, I just want to be able to, and I've got a Gomez radio. It's not the same thing. I just want to be able to print something that's like that. I'm like, it just doesn't print out like that, right? She's like, oh, yeah, it's got all the colors and everything. I'm like, no, you have to go in and paint that. Some of that stuff you probably have to glue on. Yeah, I mean, at some point that would be great. But I think there's this misconception of, I can just make this thing that looks like something else. But it's going to come out gray maybe or whatever color you print it in. And then you're going to have to kind of add in the details as you go. And I was trying to explain that to her. She's like, no, she prints them like that. I'm like, I guarantee you she doesn't. Just DM her or something, because it's not how it works. There's a lot more that goes into it. But I think from an outsider, they just don't understand the mechanics of what a 3D printer is really offering you. Yes, you can make your own things, but it still takes some, you got to sand it. Yeah. You got to paint it. Prime was telling me you really got to be careful about your supports and where you're placing that and making sure that you're printing it correctly. Otherwise, it's just not going to come out right.
Another thing too is if you're just getting into the printing hobby, there's the overhead of resin versus PLA. PLA is a little more safer. There's not as much safety involved. It does get hot. I think it does put out some fumes. I don't think they're toxic, so you still want to ventilate it. But with resin, it's toxic. If you're using typical resins, it's toxic. You don't want to get on your skin. You want to wear gloves. You have alcohol you got to clean things with. It is a liquid, so there's spillage. There's just a lot more involved with resin printing than PLA printing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, like, you mean after you print something, you have to kind of rinse it off to get that?
Rinse it off. You got to dump the liquid you don't use. You want to pour back into your bottle, right? And all that is toxic, right? A little bit of splash in your eye, your hand, maybe you're okay. But over time, who knows, right?
Yeah.
There is water washable ones. I don't know how safe it is, but my point is just there's more of an ordeal and overhead with resin printing, and you just want to take that into account because your PLA printer can probably just sit on your desk next to you. A resin printer, you want kind of a clean space for that. You don't want it on your desk next to you while you're working. Right. Maybe in the kitchen while you're cooking eggs or something. That's fire.
The funny thing is when I first started using the resin printer, like I would get headaches because I wasn't used to the smell of the type of resin. So I started trying different manufacturers, and I had to wear like the respirator mask when I'd be switching. Some were really, really potent, and others, after a while, I think everything just got numb. So I'm like, now I can put it in the kitchen and make my kids breakfast and just have resins going on.
There definitely is an odor, and there's a safety to everything we do. Especially if you're sanding, painting. Wear the respirator, wear your gloves, wear your PPE.
Yeah.
So I know we've been picking your brain a lot, but now let's just maybe start looking at some of your work. You were going to show us maybe if you could show us maybe one of your earlier. You don't show an entire dio, but something that maybe is easy for you to grab of one of your earlier builds compared to what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. I can go back a few year build. Here we go. And I could talk about how this has evolved.
Sneak peek at some of the stuff back there.
Oh, and the ass shot. So when I first got a Proxon, I think Proxon was one of the first tools that I got that I would consider it wasn't your typical tool, right? And that's one of the things that I learned from Blackmagic Craft was the Proxon. It's probably one of the best rated, hot wire cutters out there. So I picked up one of those, and one of the first things I wanted to do was create some awesome props. So this I made a few years ago, and I produced a lot of these out of foam. This is just hobby board foam. and then pink foam cut down. I based this off of a TNMT Ninja Turtles play set. I bought the dumpster, which is plastic, for like $30 off eBay, which is so overpriced. But I made this design based off that, just more in scale with 1/12 scale figures. So this is one of the first designs. And I made a bunch of these scratch built. But I wanted to be able to make more, and I wanted to make them more solid. So I ended up making a mold. I started playing with some, mold making materials. I started out small. I was doing like casting heads. Like I made a custom Venom head at one point. But I ended up molding it, and I was like, okay, great. Now I can produce these in 15 minutes. Like as long as it takes resin to set and me pull it out, I have a new one that is solid resin, not like printing resin, like actual like resin, hard resin. And one of these scratch built probably took me 30 minutes to an hour, not counting glue and all that. Excuse me. I can produce them in 15 minutes. So that's an example of like where I was 2 years ago, where I was, 6 months ago, just learning how to do things and reproduce things. Earlier we were talking about windows and printing them out. I haven't touched my printers in 6 months. So I got that laser. I'm telling you, laser is a game changer. Like everything is being made, out of wood, chipboard, acrylic, when it comes to my doors, windows, anything like that. If it's small details, I'll 3D print it, like a handle or a camera or something like that. But most of what I'm doing is, on the laser, designed in some sort of software now. Nice. And I like that aspect. That kind of goes with what I do during the day. I manage, cloud environments for a large application that, services about 50,000 people around the world. And, I manage some DevOps engineers, like database guys and DevOps engineers and application analysts. So I'm very much a nerd, and I like being able to take this hobby and kind of transform it or put it into the future, right? And I think I've been able to do that pretty well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And just seeing the evolution, because I'm sure the foam, like you said, you got to glue that all together, and it takes a lot more time. And now you're doing the molds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's another example from like foam to resin, like casted.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
And it just holds the details so well. At first, I was very nervous, like, oh, what is it going to do to the foam? Absolutely nothing. It makes an exact copy of the foam, with at least the resin and casting tool I used.
Yeah.
So I've also moved into making some dioramas, some small scale displays that I sold at a conference that I was at later last year. And
that's awesome.
I probably took that on a tangent way past where you wanted to get to.
Oh, no, that's what we're.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I love to see just the different stuff that you're creating. It's not just dioramas, but you're doing all kinds of stuff that would, kind of come together in a diorama, right? Like
there's this crossroads of all the things that I've been doing in life creatively, and I feel like the diorama is like that's the crossroad. That's where all these things meet.
Yeah.
And I can explore all these different things. Like I don't need to go out and spray graffiti on a building. I can do it on a diorama I just made, right? And that's a different form of creativity, still in the hobby of making dioramas. It's really cool how that works.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So here recently, I if we're going to talk about some more builds, most of the stuff I have behind me is from this year, and I wasn't expecting to produce much new stuff, but I have. So this is still bad glare.
Yeah, I saw that.
But this is still a prototype, very much like the back's not on it.
Yeah.
But this is just cheating a little bit by layering high quality pictures, creating some depth from the front of the acrylic, but then making like these pieces from wood, which this is supposed to represent like a mainframe or a high power computer or network cabinet. I think that comes across pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I saw the picture, the post that you did, and I was like, wow, that's awesome.
I was just going to ask if I know it can't be something you made behind there, but at first I was like, wait, it looks high quality enough that you can't really tell if that's a picture or not. And then the fact that you got the kind of the plastic in front of it really sells the image, I think.
Yeah, and it's not right on the glass, right? I think it's hard to tell because it's not permanent. Like I said, I'm still playing with it, but there's, a small like 1/4 inch difference between the glass and the picture, which adds that depth. But I do think a lot of people thought that this was tangible inside. Yeah. It is. It's a picture, but I didn't build all this stuff out. Why would I do that if I can get away with doing something like this? Right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think I saw you post that on your Instagram. I was just like, wait, is that a picture or not? I can't really tell. And that's sort of what you want, right? You want to sell the effect enough that you can't really tell if that's a picture or if that's really intricate work that somebody has done.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome, man.
It's all a part of the illusion, kind of like a magician, right? And this goes into the topic from earlier is, exposing kind of how you're doing things.
Yeah. One
of the side effects is that you're exposing your magic tricks. And you sometimes people lose the illusion that you're a magician whenever you start showing all your tricks off, right? Because they can just do it, and it's meaningless at that point if everybody can do it. But I'm okay with that, right? I think let's all play together in the same sandbox.
Yeah.
But the layering technique is dope. I did it on the music shop and comic book shop I did for Unparalleled. That was one of the first times I think I've done it. I've done it on a few corner dioramas. It just creates that illusion. And when you can get focused in on a figure and you feel like, you're sucked into maybe that moment of time, that's really what you want to create. And I think that's what I try to do with the layering technique. You don't have to have all those small details. You can, most definitely, and power to those that do it. But you can do these kind of techniques to get around it, and people don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah, it looks great, man.
I was saying, instead of High School Creations, should have been Magic Mike.
Yeah. It was taken. I tried to do that, and it was taken.
They're like, wait, what's he doing? Dials? Oh, wrong Magic Mike.
Yeah, that's the other. He's going to draw other kind of attention to his channel.
That's okay. So the more stuff I have back here has really been focused on just working with my kids, since like January. And so I don't know why you can hear me with my mic being directional, but so this was the first piece. He wanted to do this big wall. And, this is, we were talking about brick techniques. And I don't know if you can tell how this was made. I'll let you try to guess how the bricks were done here. If you can see the bricks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not as, I can tell they're not as like deeply cut. So maybe, I don't know, did you use like some kind of tool to just make the line? You're not really cutting into it. You're kind of just pressing down into it.
Exactly. Like so, clay tools, they make these rollers where you can do like bricks or rock designs and you can print them out yourself. So you're making your own tools with your printers. And that's what this is. I had him roll out the bricks. What I like to do is take like a T-square so you're straight, because these things do get whoppy quick. But if you got the right foam, you can make some really good impressions. Foam holds those impressions really well, and you can get some great looking bricks. Especially when you start doing your washes and dry brushes and stuff.
That's cool.
Really starts to pop out the detail, because you can still see all the individual bricks, like you said, from the wash probably going in and filling in those little cracks.
Yeah. But, it looks different from the other bricks, hand cut bricks or laser bricks, and the time difference. This takes about 5 minutes to do, and the other ones could take hours to, days, depending on how big a piece you're doing. So
yeah, that's awesome.
And you're still getting a quality product. You said your son made that?
Yeah, well, he rolled. I mean, I did a lot of help. But he rolled the bricks. There's some paint work that he did. We did the washing together.
That's cool.
But don't want to be fooled. There's a lot of help from Dad here. But he was there for the full experience, right?
That's awesome.
He was calling the shots of gluing it or putting magnets, and some of these cracks down here were not intentional. He broke them while he was slapping me with it, and I was like, "Oh, that just adds more cracks in it." So.
Yeah, it sells it.
It
looks
cool.
great. That's cool, man.
This next piece, like, he was very, and so was my daughter, like, hey, I want to do it completely on the laser. He's like, let's make a house with the laser, a big house, bigger than our house. I'm like, well, we can't do that. We can make a small one. So I went to the internet, and like I said, I'm a big fan of having an idea, especially using reference material. And I was like, hey, which one do you want to do? And he picked out this picture of this little townhouse. And so, we cut everything on the laser. All the bricks are cut with a laser. The doors, the windows are cut with a laser. Even the fabric was cut with the laser.
That's cool.
Such a nice touch.
Yeah.
The little curtains.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not done, but it's almost done. We got sidetracked on another build. But I thought this was pretty cool. It looks dope.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, the windows just look such like quality, man.
Precise.
Like
that's on my wish list.
Precise.
Laser this year, 2022. I'm gonna get myself a laser.
Dude, they're coming.
Frame.
Yeah.
archway that you're doing there, like doing, I can just imagine around that archway at the top of the door, bricks like that, trying to do that by hand, that would be a nightmare.
Yep.
So these are actually by hand. I did the outline of them with the laser, but I had difficulties in the software creating these angles without like doing too much burning, which would like overlap the other one. So I ended up hand cutting the diagonal. However, the perfection comes from the outline, which was done with the laser. So it's a hybrid there. But yeah, there was some learning. Too. You can see at the top here where it burnt too far in, right? So this is very much just like a play piece, right? But then I was able to cover it up with some, material to make it look.
Yeah, it just like maybe damage happened at some point during the building's life.
Yeah, it's like
some of it's exposed, hasn't been repaired yet. I think it adds character to it. It looks great.
Yeah. I mean, this is a piece that we'll have together. And we look back, we made that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What were you using to filling in the white between the bricks there? Like, what do you? Is that paint or
quick dry spackle?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So with the laser, I'm just etching lines. I'm not actually cutting. So I try to keep them pretty thin, but the depth pretty shallow, but deep enough to create the illusion of actual mortar whenever you add in that spackle. Because when it dries, especially if you get the cheap stuff, it shrinks a little bit and actually creates the normal like recessed lines of mortar you'll see on a brick wall.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it doesn't look like paint where somebody you can just paint over it. It's got that flat kind of look. Yeah. It actually looks like it's in the brick.
Yeah.
Right. And just some more like I very much like making things that are templated and symmetrical because then you can just repeat a whole bunch of them. So this is an idea for something that I'm not going to give away, but I'll show you. Fortunately, I broke a piece, but it'll be fine. Wow. Yeah. But that's just same technique of bricks. I tried to create that illusion of some bricks being pushed down, some bricks not. I don't know how well.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Well, the different coloring that you have there too really helps some of that depth. Like I know some of them are a little like orange looking.
I get tired of just red bricks or gray bricks. Like there are yellow bricks. There are other color bricks. I tried blue bricks, but I failed at that, so I repainted.
And with weathering, you're going to get different colors that come out over time anyways, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Happy accidents, learn from that. And then here recently, he wanted to do something with arches and stone, and I was like, okay, went back to the internet, and he picked out a picture, and he came up with like this very gothic cathedral type thing, and I threw in some of my own flair, but this is all cut on the laser.
That looks so awesome.
Just primed it yesterday, so it's still fresh. But in these crevices, we're going to attempt to do the mortar, but I'm going to tint it a little bit, make it maybe a darker gray, instead of just the white. So with that, we created these window templates.
Okay.
Oh wow.
And then I got some more coming. It's not just going to be clear glass, but have some ideas for that. So while he's very much like, the general contractor telling me what to do, I'm coming up with some side things within it. Like as I'm like, okay, this is a simple build, but how do I add some flair to it? Right. And I think that's the fun part. So
very cool.
How do you end up setting those windows into the foam? How do you get it to stay in there?
So with that, it's very precise measuring. They're actually going to be friction fit, and then which helps because that means there's no gaps. So when you go to glue using like styro glue or some other type of glue, I probably won't use hot glue because it's too messy. Once you slide it in, you have it where you want it. It holds itself until it dries. Because a lot of the glues that are clear, you can't use like super glue on foam. It basically melts it.
Yeah.
So you can't use super glue, but any other glue that would take time, you would want a good friction fit. So, when you're like measuring your parts, you want to do like a tenth larger because that's going to be kind of the cut. That's an example. I don't know if it's actually, but depending on what it is, you want it to be a little larger because the laser's burning the material. So it's going to be a little smaller than what you're actually measuring out to be.
Cool, man.
That's freaking awesome.
Serious skill, dude. Serious skill.
And there's so much that we can spend all night going over
I
all
know.
the different
Like,
techniques,
hey,
all the
let me
different.
see this. Let me see.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have that episode on the build, share some info, have you on here, and at the same time, like I think you've done your part with the diorama talk. You've put out so much content where you've always encouraged people, hey, go do your research. It's out there. Go seek those answers. And at the end of it, it's like that individual has to take that first step. And whether the process is messy or it's a failure, you're going to learn from it, and then just hopefully there's some takeaways from that first attempt. So that's
just
awesome,
like anything else, you got to invest yourself into it. It's not just going to come to you. It's not like, oh, I can watch one YouTube video and I'm going to be a High School Creations. It's like, no, you can tell just by talking with Mike, it's years and years of learning and experience and experimenting.
I will say that's where it starts, though. You see somebody and you want to emulate them. That's where it all starts. That's maybe what drives it for some people is I want to be like that. So don't
be like Mike.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you want to be like Mike, but be like Oilers, be like Lawless Studios.
Right.
You see that, this may be your first time seeing dioramas. Take that inspiration, but continue to do research. Don't think that first one you're going to be one and done. You're going to be, the best there ever is. It takes time.
Right.
No, well said.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what's for the future for you, Mike? I know right now you're focusing on, just your own thing and not doing commissions, but other than what you're working on currently, which I love the medieval one that you just showed us, and then that city dio that you're doing looks massive and amazing. It's one of those things I would love to just play around with and do toy photos because there's so many angles you can use there. I know you're working on that, and you'll tell us that a little bit more. But.
Yeah, so I do have a few commissions that are still wrapping up from last year. That city diorama, which if we have time, maybe I can show you guys. I can go mobile. But it's one of those that, I gave a timeline for, and it's, gone kind of past the timeline. He understands that, I'm putting my full creative capabilities into it. And one of the things that, some people fail to realize is you just don't walk out into the garage and just kicks on and you're freaking creating stuff, right? There's a sweet spot. And, a lot of times I find about halfway through my time in the shop, I get into a good rhythm and then I'm disturbed. So it takes time to create something what I'm going to say is cutting edge for your skill set, right? So like I proposed 9 months to 12 months and I'm on like 13 months and I still got some time on this thing. But that's going out to a YouTuber and that's his plan. He wanted a whole bunch of different angles. He wanted this big set. And I think he's going to be happy. He's seen the progress. He definitely, was encouraging me to make videos. And once it's done and released, there'll be a bigger video that will, have all these videos into one, kind of like how it's made kind of thing. Yeah, it's exciting. That's one that's going to spill over. And I promised a few other folks some dioramas last year that I just haven't got to, and I want to get to those because I really like the challenge it presented me. But this year is really focused on going back to what it's about for me, right? Focusing on, building with my kids, seeing the inspiration from them building their first things and it, re-sparking that same thing in me. And I don't want the stress of commissions and timelines. And like I said, it's not about money. So why it doesn't need those things to be tied to it? As much as I would love to do this full time, I don't want it to have those stresses, So it's really about refocusing on my skill and sharpening it. And, maybe next year come out and do commissions, but that's not something I have to do. As much as people reach out and ask if I can do stuff, I'm not open for it right now. And I love that you're asking, but I want to focus on building for myself.
Awesome.
Well, it's awesome that you can do that, though. You can walk away and just focus on what you want. It's not, like you said, it's not your job. It's not your main source of income. It's something that you do as a hobby. So, learn what you want to learn, come back. It's like doing I equate it to like training in Dragon Ball Z or something. You're taking the time to train. You're going to come back with a new set of skills and like a whole new mic.
Hyperbolic time chamber. I'm hoping to come out in like 15 minutes for you guys, but it's been 3 years for me.
Oh man, that would be amazing if that existed, right? Being able to do that, be incredible. Hey, you're ripped. You weren't ripped yesterday. Yeah. Well, I've been working out.
Keto.
If you don't mind though, I know one of the questions we got on the builds, if you could just maybe kind of show us around, your workstation really quick. I know you don't have to give out all the secrets, but I know there's people that probably love to see kind of how it all comes together.
Sure. Disclaimer: I did not clean up, so this is real life high school creations shop here. So
here we do it raw here, so there's no
raw. All right, let me
totally
turn on the lights.
Man.
All right, I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna mute myself here.
Cool. Yeah, and as you guys are watching this, you know, if there's things that we haven't asked Mike, or there's things that you want to learn, you know, obviously he might not tell you all of his secrets, but he seems to be very open in sharing information and wanting to help others. So, you know, maybe shoot him a DM or just ask him a question. Obviously, be respectful of the guy's time, but he's a wealth of information. He's really learned a lot. So I think he'd be a great resource for stuff like this.
There he is.
There he is.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, well, take him out for a second.
Yeah.
I think we can mute him on. Let me mute that mic.
Okay.
There we go. He's muted.
All right, let's try this. How's that sound?
Yep. Yeah, it's good.
All right. Nice. We got mobile mic here.
Yeah, let me flip this camera around real quick. All in my nose. Boom, here we go. First thing you see is Bud Light. Sorry. All right.
Hey, you got to drink while you're working.
Right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in from this is my garage. I've basically converted. And like I said, I did not clean up for this.
Totally okay, man.
But so I closed off the garage wall with the actual foam that I built with to give me just more space, right? I was able to come out additional 2 feet in the back to give me more space. As I've gotten into bigger builds, which you see here, and we'll talk about, I just need to expand it. So I've added some flair to the shop just to make it a little more cooler to come in and something to brag about. I mean, it's nothing great, but for me, it's pretty awesome. So I got some artwork. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Definitely.
You can see that the CNC is very much more of a bench right now. But you know, here's some stuff I'm working on, some fire escapes.
Nice.
Everything in there I have built myself, you know, basically like all the shelving, all the, you know, the workbenches. So like there's like shop vacs tied to this stuff. There's lighting.
Smart though, because it helps keep it clean as you're going, you know. And man, CNC is bigger than I expected it was going to be.
Yeah, it's 2 feet by 4 feet.
Wow.
It's not the largest. I think they have a 4x4, but yeah, it's quite large. And it works for the size dioramas I work with. So it didn't need anything really too much bigger. Although if I would buy another one, it would be the next size up. So there's probably one of my first like true tools is the Proxon. It's just sitting here. It's where I cut foam, a bunch of scraps, extra TVs. Like I said, I didn't clean up, guys. So it's pretty dirty, but
don't worry about
a
it.
Workshop.
Yeah,
it looks like a workshop to me.
Yeah, I'm very big about recording what I do. So there's all my media, so I can, you know, media devices, so I can quickly get to them. Goosenecks like crazy, GoPros, all the different devices. Printing area, like I said, for resin printing, kind of want like a clean space dedicated to it and it covered. So there's the Wash and Cure and the Mono X, which is the 4K printer. Below that is some pretty sick. Like I wanted a cabinet to, you know, put the PLA printers in. So I made these like plexiglass doors and used the laser to engrave some stuff on here. Here's the Enablers logo.
Nice.
I love how you have that set up down there. It looks awesome.
That's really cool.
Really cool.
And then at the big boy over here, this is the Max. It is one of the biggest Ender 3s, and that's what I was doing the helmets on. So
okay. And I'm sure being down there, like it helps prevent dust from building up on it and helps keep it clean. Because I know that's super important when you're 3D printing is having that surface super clean.
Absolutely, yeah. Dust is a big thing, even though it's kind of open. So you still want some airflow. It gets hot, but yeah, that's one thing. Plus, it looks cool. Plus, it saves on space. They're not out on a surface, and those surfaces are now, you know, places I can work. So that's pretty cool. And again, just more art from artists. I try to include artists other artists, not my own work. I think one of the keys too, if you guys are working in a shop that's got like concrete floor, get you some nice like yoga mats or something like that and get down. So especially if you're out there a lot, that's going to save your feet.
Yeah.
One of the ideas, I forget who I get it from, was kind of this hub and spoke model for a shop. So everything centralizes on one spot where you're building, and all your tools are kind of like around them. So hub and spoke, if you can imagine. Yeah. So my build table, which is 3x8, is the center of the shop. And this is where I display and kind of build and assemble everything that I'm, building from all the, different project areas in the shop. But this is that city dio that we're talking about. And it's quite large. Probably looks small on camera, but you can see that's
you can tell everything's big. And the brickwork on that really sticks out to me. That's one of the first things I noticed when you showed it off.
Yeah, these are hand-cut bricks, and you can see like the imperfections. So it's very much like old world kind of look.
That looks really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there's very contrast to the side, right? Because that's cut with the laser, although it looks heavily weathered, but there's very much a contrast, which I like. You see that in a lot of buildings, especially, my downtown areas. Like the front of the buildings definitely have a distinct look compared to the sides. So something I wanted to convey
very cool
in this building.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it looks amazing, dude.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. I like the awnings. Is that something that you did with the laser?
No, that's actually hand cut. So that's out of styrene. Styrene is very sensitive to heat. And I attempted to cut a few things with the laser using styrene, but I could never get the right temperatures and speed right for it to look good. So this is actually all hand cut. So I do some hand cutting out there for those that think I just do everything with machines. But awesome. Things like these details here, that's obviously laser. These windows are laser. Excuse me, the bricks are laser here. But then there's still a lot of stuff that's handmade. Obviously, these windows are laser. Some of these details here are laser. But this stuff is like hand cut, right, from my chipboard. So it's a combination. It just depends. Is it really worth my time to go design this if I can just cut it by hand in a few strokes?
Right. Yeah. And the little details that you add like that, that's really what comes out in the shots. Like, I can, using that, I'm just thinking about all the different angles I could use just to kind of show it off a little bit. And I just love the intricate detail that you've got in this. It looks great, man.
Yeah, I really like this door, and I hope there gets more attention on this door, like these handles.
Yeah.
So this was like a handle set, like a big, round handle set, and I ended up breaking it. And I was like, oh, that looks cool. That can look like old locks, and then I could just glue it on this way, sand it down a little bit, make it look something different. So I didn't have to redesign a new handle set. I just had to reconfigure one that was already made.
And it looks like you got kind of an AC unit in one of the windows down there. That's cool.
Yeah, so I definitely, when I was building this, I didn't want it to look like all the same building. So I went and I got these different designs. These are like what you would see kind of like in hotels, but in New York, you see this in a lot of style buildings. It's like these ACs built into the windows below. So I thought that was kind of a cool look. Over here, we'll still have traditional like ACs that I've designed in Tinkercad. So there'll be a few ACs here. There's these these fire escapes. I put a few on here, and then maybe a few on the other side, and then make some ladders and stuff when I get to that point. But it's a dope build. And then here's the windows. These will go. I'm telling you, dude, I've been just making all sorts of crazy windows. These will go into here. And then there's actually details that are missing on these other windows, but there's these fine details. I hand cut these.
Insane, dude.
That's epic.
Yeah, that looks so good. And I know it's not even a finished product, and we're already like, wow, this looks amazing.
Yeah,
I'm hoping I can finish it, and it becomes one of those defining pieces. That's what I'm wanting. So there's a lot of pressure on it. It's probably why I'm taking so long to build it. But
very cool.
But yeah, so another thing about the shop is having ample power. So at every station, I got power coming from everywhere. Actually, I've had a lot of work done in here where I've had contractors come in and run power. This thing specifically is on two twin 20 amp breakers on its own. And it has a whole set of its own peripheral devices. So this is the laser. This is my baby, the thing that I use most right now. And this is by a company called Boss Laser. This is the LS 1420. It's kind of a smaller bed, but it does everything I need to. And it's dirty too. You should not leave your chips in here, but safety reasons. But, there's a lot of peripheral devices. You have an exhaust fan that has to get all that exhaust out, right? You're burning material, so you don't want to breathe that in. You got to keep that laser cold. So there's a chiller. Shout out to Star Marvel. There's his troop sticker. That keeps it cold. And then on the laser itself, there is a air assist to keep like smoke and dust and everything off that lens, so you don't have to clean it as often.
Damn. Yeah.
So you have all those different components.
Insane.
Yeah.
And what's cool is this thing's intelligent. If one of those dependent components aren't on, the laser will not fire. I can't tell you how many times I thought I broke it and I just didn't have a device on. So it's when you buy a nicer end laser, you know, you're getting those qualities built in.
That's awesome.
Helps you protect you from yourself.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That type of thing.
Definitely.
Dude, that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Man, we appreciate
it. Well, thanks,
Mike.
Yeah. I know that was a little impromptu, but we really appreciate it. I know our viewers will too, because I know everybody's kind of just curious. How do you put all this together? Like, where do you even start? You know? So I think that'll help out a lot of people. That's awesome.
All right. Well, I think Mike's ready for our last segment, which we end with the Dirty Dozen. Mike, you're going to be a contestant. We got a couple of topics, and then just it's like rapid fire. Whatever comes to mind.
First thing that comes to your mind.
You just feel free to share. No pressure.
This is like an ink blot. Whatever I see.
Yeah.
Mine. All right.
Let me see here. All right.
Let me get cool for this.
It's like your signature look, Mike.
Yeah.
I love when you start the enablers with that. Like, oh, that's definitely Mike right there.
So here we go. First one, and it's going to be 12 topics. So the first one is going to be Mythic Legions.
Horse. Is it a one-word kind of thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Horse. Okay. Nice.
Horse. Are you getting more into Legions, Mike?
I want to, but I picked up those two when we were in Cali, and it hasn't grown since then. But I'm sure once I see more in person, I'll pick them up. It's one of my kryptonites is seeing a figure I really want in person, and I probably didn't buy because I shouldn't, but will buy if I see it in person.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those lines I'm getting more into myself.
Star Wars Black Series.
Oh, man. The first thing I thought about it's not even one word. There's no butterflies in any of their figures, man. It upsets me. Butterflies.
No butterfly joints, yeah. Marvel Legends.
Man. I think hunting, like one of the first things. Yeah, hunting. Nice. Marvel Legends I was always on the hunt for Legends.
Yeah.
You're getting more and more out of that now, too, you said, right? You're not really collecting Legends as much.
Right, yeah. I'm not into any of the new waves, and I'm even like in the retro Spider-Man wave. I just want the 2 new Spider-Man bucks. I don't even care about Shocker or the other ones. If I see them, I'll probably buy them. But like, even that Iron Spider, like I wish they had put on the new buck.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep. Jurassic Park.
Dude, Velociraptors or kitchen. Like all I could think is that scene, like in the first one where the kids are in the kitchen. Like I remember I was so scared I had to leave the theater. Like I was a little kid, man.
Is that one of your favorites, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Park?
Jurassic Park. My kids are now into it too. So like,
I was gonna say your kids are into dinosaurs now too, right?
Yeah. So that's just my jam. Like, especially when they're into it. But yeah, dinosaurs. I've always been a dinosaur fan.
Nice.
Yeah, you got that Carnotaurus. I don't know if I said that right recently.
Dude, that line is dope. Yeah. So Rebor, and I pre-ordered more of them. But yeah, that line is dope. They're solid figures. The detail is amazing. Like, yeah, I'm definitely into that line. They're small. They're 1/35 scale, which is fine because I have a bunch of those colossal Mattel dinosaurs. My son does. That's like 8 now, and they will take up an entire room. They're so big, so there's no reason to get figures that big. So in dinosaurs, I'm okay with 35th scale.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to have it in 1/12. That'd be.
I want a 1/1 dinosaur scale figure.
Yeah.
Maybe a Velociraptor.
Massive.
Mezco.
Man, the weight on a Mezco. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what they're becoming more and more known for now is the weight.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just not, you see a lot of companies like Super 7 now has the status page. Legions has a status page like, hey, this is in processing or this is retooling or this is in production. And even NECA, I'll get emails from NECA saying, hey, here's some shipping updates. Yeah. Mezco, yeah, they did an email like a few months ago, but they just don't say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And I was telling Prime this at one point. I wonder how many thousands of figures they have on pre-order right now from their customers and how much money they're holding of people's money that they're not really delivering on. It's not a good thing to be, in a position for a company, I think. It's a dangerous place.
Yeah. 89 bats. Where you at?
Yep. Where you at? G.I. Joe classified.
2 years and counting, man. 2 years and counting.
I mean, the best action figure line at that price. I mean, I know there's several words, but I mean, right now, no one can touch those figures.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're.
I can just find them on the shelf.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only problem.
Have you picked up any of the Action Force stuff, Mike?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I.
I should have pre-ordered and I didn't, and now I've just like missed out and just we talked about it earlier, like kind of chilling on the purchases for this year. I've got pre-orders from 2 years that I'm still waiting on. And got Thunder Tank coming. I gotta keep room.
Yeah. I hear you.
Budget list.
Hot Toys.
Just dope, pure dope, like dripping dope. Like, love some Hot Toys, man. Just can't afford them all.
Super 7.
Yeah, I would say nostalgia. Like they hit that nostalgia like G-spot on me every time with the lines that I like, and especially with the Turtles and the Thundercats. Like, and now, man, they're into Simpsons. They're into everything, man. That just pure nostalgia. Like, it's probably one of my favorite companies, and I like the people. I like their style. Like, I know it's way more than we need for this, but yeah.
That's awesome.
No, I hear you, man. It's one of those things. Like, I hope they don't get more properties because I'm a little afraid for my wallet. Like when I saw they're doing Roger Rabbit, I'm like, oh shit, Roger Rabbit Ultimates. As of now, it's only Reaction. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that saved me a little bit. Yeah. But
we need the Ultimates Jessica for real.
Oh, that would sell like hotcakes, man. But I think sometimes with Reaction, they do end up in Ultimates. So at some point we might see a Jessica Rabbit Ultimate figure. That would be incredible.
Mayfix.
Yeah, articulation, man. They got the game, and once they were able to figure out those QC issues and then add like soft goods where it makes sense, dude, they're just hot. I pretty much got every Mafex on pre-order right now at the Big Bad Toy Store.
Nice.
I'm not missing one.
The comic line is just killer right now, and I agree with you. Especially if you miss out, they're hard to find for a good price. Because they don't re-release them very often.
Yeah. NECA.
Ooh, man. Ambassador only because I used to be a NECA ambassador. I guess I could have said Turtles too, but I like some NECA. I like what they do for the price point, and
yeah.
When you say ambassador, were you one of the people that would go to Target and take the pictures, or like what?
Clean up the aisle, take a picture, and I never won anything, and I still get the emails of all these people that win shit.
Me too.
But yeah.
Yeah, I was an ambassador for my local Target, and I stopped doing it like probably a year and a half ago. But they still send me the emails. I think they still assume that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Maybe I should just jump back in and start taking pictures again. But the whole COVID thing. Yeah, and it was great because that's one of the prime spots I hit for toy hunting. So it made sense. I'm already there. I just straighten up the aisle and try to win some money to buy more figures.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought process. I'm already going there once a week anyways, so why don't I just do this and potentially get some free money for the figures that I'm always hunting?
Nice. Last one, McFarlane Toys. Good old Toddy Mac.
I don't know what the word is. I want to love the toys. I'm a big fan of Toddy Mac, and I don't have a single word for this, but like I want to love the lines that he puts out, but that looks dope. Like there,
Yeah.
I think like the game stuff he does pretty well at, but the movie stuff doesn't come off very well. You know, the articulation's weirdly cut. But there's this love that I want. There's this love I want to be there for him. It's just not there.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. That's our Dirty Dozen. Let me go ahead. Boom.
That's cool.
Bam.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah, Mike. I really appreciate you being on, man. It was great to kind of dig into your mind a little bit in the master of the creations that you are. And I'm sure that to Prime's point, we can keep you on here for another hour, asking you a bunch of questions, letting you divulge all your secrets. But really appreciate it, Mike. You're an awesome dude. I love the way that you treat people and that you're willing to share, and I'm a big fan of what you do. So thank you, Mike, for being here. For anybody listening, if you aren't already, please go subscribe to Highschool Creations on YouTube. Go follow him on Instagram. He does some amazing work. You might see more of what we were showing here, that medieval floor, or not the medieval build that he's doing, the city diorama. It sounds like more is to come. So make sure you guys are following him there so you don't miss that. And big thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me on.
For sure. We're going to throw you in our green room, close it up, and then we'll wrap up the show.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Mike.
Man, what an awesome discussion with Mike, picking his brain, learning all his tips and tricks, his wizardry.
I love stuff like that, man, because it's just it's something that I'm just not really accustomed to. So for me, it's like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, oh, let me ask you all these questions that probably seem very noob in nature, but I love to learn stuff.
And the great thing is, really cool. I'm sure a lot of people everyone is at that level where we're going to have a handful of novice individuals that want to have those questions asked and answered. And it was great. He was able to give us a tour. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let us know what other guests you guys want us to reach out and hopefully have on the show, or other topics you guys want us to tackle. That's going to be pretty much it for this episode. I've been your host, Josh, aka Prime to the First. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all under Prime to the First.
And I've been Nate, aka FigureFan_Nate. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, occasionally on TikTok. And please, guys, if you're listening, hit that like button, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you about what you think about this episode. And thanks everybody for all your support on the last one. Glad you guys liked it.
Thanks, guys. You guys have been listening to The Figure Booth.